Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, what have you. Hope everybody's doing well. I am going to share my screen so that we can get straight into the presentation for today. So here we go. My small group presentation or putting together really is centered around the idea of cultivating Christian professionals for cultural trauma advocacy. And kind of what that looks like is in Joy DeGrew's book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, she writes this quote in saying, "We need strong leadership in many areas: politics, jurisprudence, social activism, education, science, and business, to name a few." Because of that, I thought, wouldn't it be a good idea that we put together small groups within our churches that are solely focused on building leaders who are culturally responsive, and Christian leaders who are culturally responsive and are actively engaging in their work professions to the point that they are advocating for the well-being of Black people in our healing for cultural trauma. That being said, the need for this is because we need more Black Christian professionals. So just Black Christians who are in the workforce, working and doing whatever they feel like the Lord has called them to do secularly. We also need more cultural trauma advocacy. So we need more people understanding and knowing what cultural trauma is and the shared experience of that and how it affects Black people on a day-to-day basis in our lives and as a culture. And then we just need more Black leadership cultivation in general. So we need more people who can effectively and lead with efficiency for the betterment of our people and our culture at large. And so here are 5 questions that I put together. It's kind of like an interview or application process for my leaders who will be leading. And all these questions are pretty much centered around their academic or highest level education that they've achieved related to their various secular field, what field in particular they are working for, and basically what biblical or theological rationale they've adopted in order to effectively work in their field and justify their work in that field, and also to how they're going to bridge the gap between Christianity, their workforce or work field expertise, and then also to how they're going to advocate for the well-being of Black people and our healing for cultural trauma. Leadership training is centered around three books, if you will. So Exodus, Unspeakable, and Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Our first initial leadership training is centered around the book of Exodus and how Moses led a culturally oppressed people, being the children of Israel, out of Pharaoh's leadership or dictatorship. 2 chapters from Sarah Travis's Unspeakable, and then also the chapter 6 of Joy DeGrew's Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, where our initial quote came from. And then here's our curriculum template. And so essentially, this is 5 points that each session should touch on. I'm not going to micromanage or create the curriculum per se, because I want the expertise of those various workers or professionals or whatever to be able to put that together. But at the very foundation of each session, at least, I want each of these points to be touched on. And all of those sessions should end with Jesus and his role in the discussion, being that he has been a man of color who was systematically oppressed, and his role as the ultimate healer. So I want to kind of touch on his 100% man and 100% God, and that he has been oppressed again, but he is also the one who leads to our ultimate healing in Christ. So in bridging the gap, this is my critique, is that there's not a lot of writers who are working in specific fields. So doctors, educators, lawyers, social activists who specifically work or at least have wrote about or written or advocated on, at least in the books that we've read or the books that I've come across in my own research, who specifically work to advocate for the well-being and healing of Black people as it relates to cultural trauma and being Christians and our role in that. So 3 points really: their expertise, being a Christian, and then also to bridging that gap with those two pieces with cultural trauma and the healing of that. Here are my sources, and I want to definitely highlight Dr. Charles Thurman's an analysis of Methodist class meeting and its spiritual effects on Black millennials, as it's kind of leading the way in our cultivation, or our putting together really of these small groups, and how we're going to allow or teach leaders how to help other Black people heal from our cultural trauma and its negative effects on us as a culture. Thank you.